Chapter 71. I feel it before I reach the X-flow tunnel, and my fists clench so hard I nearly bleed myself with my nails. The revenant I made out of Grig's son, that fucking murderer, is still functional after I told the damn thing to kill itself. With tendril-strengthened arms I practically throw the cover to the sewer entrance open, jumping down with a wet splatter into a feces-filled tunnel, sinking knee-deep. According to what I can feel, that asshole is down here, presumably having brought the other corpses and hidden them a few days ago like I ordered. He was supposed to kill himself, too, but his soul is barely cracked. His body must hardly be damaged at all. Did my order not take? No, this should be within my power. My shard seems to have integrated just fine, as well. What the fuck happened? I walk right above where I feel the soul, reaching my hand down into the sewage. I grab hold of something, pulling the familiar corpse up out of the muck. The fucker is a disgusting mess, with chunks of skin peeling off his face and sewage seeping into the muscle to help it rot. Yet he's as alive as anything I can make, and when I pull him up he staggers to his feet under his own power, stammering like a fool. Miss Vita. I am so sorry, I tried to. Why the fuck are you alive? I snarl, grabbing the kid by his throat. I tried to do what you said. The boy whines. But I couldn't. I couldn't figure out how to die. Oh, okay. Let me help you then. I toss him into the wall of the tunnel, striking out with a kick to his skull the moment he slumps over. I'm no pugilist, but my body is strong and reinforced by powerful tendrils and plenty of pent-up rage. My foot hits with a crunch, cotton-armored boots meant for stomping through the jungle connecting hard enough to pop him like a grapefruit. Or at least what should have been hard enough, but it's actually my boot that shatters instead of his skull. The cotton breaks into pieces, cutting up my toes a little and leaving my murderous revenant seemingly unharmed. Well, I rip some more skin and muscle off, but that stuff isn't doing anything anyway. My eyes narrow. You have durability talent, I immediately deduce. Why yes Miss Vita, I tried stabbing myself, drowning myself, and starving myself, but nothing seemed to work. I am so sorry. I don't know how to follow your orders, Miss Vita. God damn it. Half of those things wouldn't kill a revenant anyway, but if he can't break himself. You're about as good at dying as you are at baking bread, I seethe. Are you sure your talent isn't just being worthless at whatever you were told to do? Stand up. He gets to his feet, what's left of his lower lip trembling as I start to circle around him. I suppose this means his soul is anchored to his body's bones. His talent either reinforces bone or it reinforces all of him, and the rest of his non-bone body just isn't considered him anymore. Does he have two talents, or does he have one that encompasses both strong bones and blunt force child murder? In retrospect, I should have seen this coming. This kid got the shit kicked out of him by Grig hard enough for me to hear it through a brick wall and he barely got bruised. Grig probably would have killed a child without a talent like this. Fuck, for all I know he did. It's a mercy that the family can't reproduce anymore. What's your name? I ask. He doesn't really deserve a spot in my memory, but if I'm lucky I'll just forget it later. I need something to call him, for now. Juddy, Miss Vita. Juddy, I say evenly, you killed my sister. The horror that washes over my revenant's face is equal parts satisfying and infuriating. Does he care because he realizes he's a monster, or does he only care because my shard is making him obsessed with me? I guess the end result is the same either way. I am so sorry. I remember being so angry, I just wanted to. No, I'm so sorry. Please let me make it up to you. Make it up to me? I laugh. You want to fucking make it up to me? You can't even die like you're supposed to. You're gonna make me do that for you too. There is nothing you can do for me other than ending your disgusting existence. I understand, the murderer answers. I'm ready to be accepted by the Mistwatcher. I blink, momentarily stunned by the absurdity of that line. He's religious? Of course he is. I've never really picked anyone's brain about that before. It might be funny. Accepted by the Mistwatcher? I ask innocently. What do you mean? Well, the Mistwatcher takes us back when we die, he explains. He guards and shepherds the next world, escorting new souls to their bodies and old souls to heaven. Oh, wow. That sounds nice. Are you looking forward to it? I suppose it'll be nice to see my dad again. He's dead, isn't he? I smile a little at that, tendrils squirming invisibly into the murderous kid's body. Oh yes, he's very dead, Jody. But you won't be seeing him again. What? I grab what's left of the boy's collar and pull downward, forcing him to meet me eye to eye. There is no afterlife in the Mistwatcher's jaws, I promise him coldly. His eyes go wide. It's funny, I doubt a single sentence would convince any normal person that their religion is false. My revenants, however, trust me completely. Jody knows the truth of my words because I'm the one speaking them. This is how I will make him hurt. Nothing awaits you. Even if the Mistwatcher had any interest in bringing you to some kind of reward after death, you'd never make it. I'm your god, not that thing. I am going to peel your soul apart, sliver by sliver, and crush it to dust until not a single aspect of the person you were remains. His whole world comes apart in that moment. I see it on his face and I feel it in his core. But the Mistwatcher, he has to, his protests don't amount to anything, because of course I know he doesn't even believe them. I grab his soul, using a few tendrils to hold it in place while one begins to chip away at it. Still inside a body, Jody remains awake as I start to crack his very being. Judging by his reaction, I suspect it is excruciatingly painful. You killed my sister, I tell him again. Apologize to me. I'm sorry. The boy cries. I didn't know. Fractures dance up his core, and a scream erupts from his lips as I grab hold of these new, jagged grooves, and rip a soul shard out of him in much the same way I'd pull one out of myself. Of course, as a simple human, his soul is not at all built for such things. You didn't know. I press. You broke a child's neck. What didn't you know? That you would be punished for it. No, whatever words he was going to say are cut off as I pull another shard out of him, eliciting another scream. Did you not know that the child you killed mattered? Did you just think she was some street rat? Do you think that means you can do what you want with her? Stop screaming. His incessant noises cease immediately, becoming silent gasps as the pain of impending annihilation continues to overwhelm his mind. You killed my sister, I remind him a third time. Why you killed my father? He chokes out. I scowl. What, did I break some actually important part of his undead soul, so now he can sass me? Or is the pain just so much that it's overwhelming the mind control? Doesn't matter, I suppose. I ate your father, I correct him, ripping off another shard and smashing it to dust. You don't even deserve that. Fuck you. Jody shouts. Careful, I hiss. You'd better choose your last words carefully, or else I'll just make you change them. Into something like, I know. Where's your mom? There it is. Despair, terror, hopelessness. Complete and all-consuming. I've killed people who fucked with me, but this is much more than that. He tries to reach his arms up and cover his mouth, but all I have to do is repeat myself. Tell me where your mother is, Jody. She begs on Folsade Street. His mouth barks, betraying him. We sleep in some of the abandoned shacks by the defunct Kiden farm. See? I sneer at him. Now those are some good last words. I shatter him, and then I shatter the pieces until nothing is left. I have no interest in making anything that was once him into part of me. Letting the corpse drop into the outflow channel, I let out a sigh of satisfaction. I don't know if that counts as justice, but it certainly was. Cathartic. My heart thunders, fingers clenching and unclenching. I did it. I thought he was dead before, but I know for certain now. I should have just done this the first time. With some deep breaths of foul sewer air, I'm slowly starting to calm down, minutes passing in silence. Getting the knowledge out of him was fun and all, but I of course don't actually have any plans to kill his mother. As far as I know, she's never done anything to me. It might be a good idea to go find her and see if she's plotting some sort of inane revenge, but at this point a career widow with no apparent skills probably isn't any form of threat. The whole thing was worth it for the look on his rotten, fucking face, though. And I got the job done for the Hunters Guild. This didn't go too badly. Now, I suppose, I should go to the next item on my agenda, which would be checking up on the revenants I actually like. I guess I may as well make the entire trip via the sewers, since I would draw way too much attention being covered in shit. While I don't know the sewers anywhere near as well as I know the streets, I can tell more or less where we are by the collection of souls above me. Wherever large concentrations of people are in the line, I know that's a major street and I can figure out which street it is just from knowing the city. I hit more than a few dead ends along the way, but a few hours later I find what I suspect is going to be the closest sewer exit to Penelope's Revenant Research Facility. There are a couple people milling about, but they quickly leave when I emerge, smelling like death. I quickly run out, unlock the doors, and make my way downstairs. It's me. I call out. As per tradition, Vitamin jumps onto me from her hiding spot above the door, though this time she swerves at the last second, kicking off the wall to avoid touching me. She lands a good distance away, skidding to a stop and turning to face me as the other two revenants emerge from their hidey holes. Whoa. Hey there, Mom. You, kind of look like shit. And smell like it, Theodora comments. Huh? Can revenants smell? They can obviously see and hear, so I don't know why they wouldn't be able to. It just seems weird for some reason. Margaret and Theodora are both covering their noses, so I guess they can smell. I'm personally not much bothered by the sewage, so maybe they can smell even better than I can. My bad, I say, shrugging. Hunter job in the sewers. I had to kill a monster down there. So how have things been going? Sorry I dropped off the map for a couple days. I've been in the forest. Have you all held up okay? Well enough, Theodora says slowly. Margaret and I have had a breakthrough on figuring out Soulside, and we're slowly coming up with a workable spell. I look over at Margaret because she starts squirming at that, like the smallest kid in a gang trying to work up the courage to ask for extra food. That's great news, I say honestly. You got something else to say, Margaret? Well, Penelope finally got her hands on a couple more bodies, and I was sort of hoping to get one of them. What's wrong with? Oh, right, I remember. You want to be in a dead woman instead of a dead old man. Yeah, doesn't matter to me at all. Go grab the body and I'll swap you over. Margaret beams, excitedly rushing off into another room. Honestly, I almost forgot that she is in an old man's body in the first place. She just feels like Margaret to me, and Margaret feels like a woman. That kind of thing is yet another aspect of souls that I didn't used to be able to determine very well, but now I find it pretty obvious even for people I've never met before. I guess it's not always obvious. Most people don't have a super strong impression one way or the other, and some people, like Xiang, leave no impression whatsoever. Margaret, though, is unambiguously female, at least according to whatever the fuck my soul sense is using to determine that. I can't say I understand it, but it's never been wrong before. It occurs to me, suddenly, that I have at some point entirely stopped recognizing people by their faces and started recognizing them by their souls instead. I don't think I even look at someone's face when I talk to them much anymore. I don't know when I started doing that. Souls are a much more convenient thing to pay attention to anyway. Theodora casts a few spells to start cleaning the shit off of everything, myself included, while we wait. Soon enough, Margaret brings me her preferred corpse, so I rip her out of her current one and plop her into that. Now she looks like a dark-skinned older woman who seems as though she probably didn't work out very much in life. A major noble, perhaps, as though she's somewhat aged. She doesn't look old enough to have died from it. She could likely either afford cosmetic biomancy treatments or perform them herself. Well, back when she was alive, I mean. I don't really care what this body used to be anymore, because now it's Margaret. The revenant soul spreads its web of fibers around the inside of the corpse, and soon enough Margaret is up and moving again. "How does it feel?" I ask. Margaret flexes her hands, grabs at her chest, and slaps a hand back and forth between the inside of her thighs. "Way better," she assures me, grinning and daring to give me a hug. I let her, more out of apathy than any particular interest. Vitamin then hops up and decides she wants to hug as well, but from her I absolutely reciprocate. I grab her out of the air and give her a big squeeze. "While I'm here," I say, "would one of you check me to see if it's safe to start learning to channel mana? I think I've gotten pretty damn good at these cancel command thingies." "Ooh. Sweet. Vitamin cheers. Magic Mom. I would be surprised if you figured it out this early, but I can test you, I suppose," Theodora offers. I nod, happy it's her. She's less afraid of me, now, but should hopefully still be cautious enough to not consider falsely inflating how skilled I am at this. Not that it matters a whole lot, since I want Penelope to be around for the final bout of training either way. The odds of Penelope not being as blunt and critical as possible are pretty slim. I start wiggling my fingers around and humming the vocal cancel at the same time. Theodora approaches me and shoves me backwards, causing me to stumble but not preventing me from continuing the symbols. My voice doesn't even waver. "That's actually not bad," Theodora says. "A lot of the other tests can be pretty painful. Do you want me to run through them on you?" I nod. Theodora, for a moment, radiates an almost disturbing contentment as her natural soul and my added charge sit in harmony for a rare, glorious moment. I think that means she wants to hurt me. Later, I conclude that is absolutely what it means, but at least I pass her magic tests. Next step, channeling. Chapter 73 Agony dances through my entire body, a screaming pain reaching from scalp to toe. Pure and raw, there is nothing but me in the torture. Yet still, my body moves. My voice speaks clearly, and my hands continue their purpose. I do not flinch. Retreating within myself, I am simply content with the reassurance that the parts of me which actually matter are unaffected by the spell. "You are remarkably resistant to trauma," Penelope comments. That line more than anything almost causes me to break my concentration. I look up at her and she shrugs, ending the spell she's been casting to metaphorically set my nerves on fire. At least, I assume it's metaphorical. I take the end of her spell as permission to stop repeating cancel commands and take a deep breath, wincing as my focus returns to my physical body. Penelope showed up at our little hidey hole fairly shortly after Theodora finished torturing me while I practiced cancel commands, and promptly took over the agony herself. She is even more effective at the job, although at least she doesn't seem to take gleeful satisfaction in inflicting pain on me. You know, Penta said the exact same thing, back when that monster attacked and she bit her own limbs off. You remember that? With unfortunate clarity, Penelope sighs. The similarities between myself and the monster that stole my mind aside, you absolutely pass. You are better at not being interrupted than most novice mages. I nod, trying to shake off the lingering pins and needles from Penelope's horribly sadistic spell. Not that using it in this case was sadism, but rather her looking out for my future well-being. I'm about to learn something that can kill me if I lose focus, after all. So we can start then? I ask. We may as well. I'm very curious as to what you want to use these eggs for, but you're just going to pester me about magic until we do this first, aren't you? Definitely, yes. Penelope nods, having clearly expected this. Well, first things first. You'll be happy to know that I have officially gotten the permission necessary to train you. If you do learn some spells, you will be legally allowed to cast them. It's much easier to get this permission for hunters, so that was helpful. Now I have to give you the spiel, though. Channeling is secret. You are not to ever teach anyone about it, not even the slightest hint, because the practice is actually very easy. Unlike the months you spent figuring out your cancel commands, I fully expect you to channel your first chunk of mana in less than an hour. Therein lies the problem. If more people realize that anyone can do it, more idiots will try and you'll increase the number of people blowing themselves up. Hundreds of people die every year attempting to teach themselves these things, so don't go and give them any ideas. You mean like you did with me? That, Penelope says coldly, was not me. At the time I did not at all agree with that monster's insistence on teaching you. My opinion of your ability has since risen considerably, however, so here we are now. Here we are now, I agree, wincing at my second pinter-related faux pas in a row. Practicing cancel commands just makes me think of her, since it was one of the last things we did together. So, how do I do this? I'll show you shortly. Since you're most likely some sort of natural mage, the process will be somewhat instinctive, but there are a few things we can do to help you understand exactly what's happening. That's where we'll start. Theodora, if you would. The undead metamancer starts to cast on me and I let her. Suddenly, I start seeing glowing dust everywhere. It's like I just walked into a thin veil of fog, moving and blowing about the air in beautiful patterns. Is this monocyte? I ask. Got it in one, Penelope confirms, seeming pleased. Come over here, look at some of these metal runes. I follow her, walking over towards one of the many metal-infused ink wards that Theodora and Margaret set up around the room. The glowing particles nearby get sucked into the wards and get immediately replaced, causing a constant stream flowing inward from all directions around them. Magical wards like these functionally use metal in place of a soul. Metal draws in mana, so when it is arranged or engraved with proper commands, that mana automatically gets converted into a spell effect, changing into whatever sort of energy the spell requires. Even though mana is being consumed, you will never have to worry about running out. Mana is ubiquitous, it is everywhere. There is always more. The only thing you have to worry about is how much you can hold inside yourself. Watch me. Penelope starts to channel, which feels much like it always feels to my soul sense. However, thanks to the monocyte spell, I can see the particles of magic swirling inside her soul and quickly changing. The moment it enters her, something about the magic energy alters. It starts moving faster, vibrating almost as if it's angry. This is about the limit of magic I can safely keep inside myself. If I go above this amount, I will start risking strain on my body and presumably on my soul. As such, I can cast a vast number of spells at or below this level of power, but there is a very stark limit to the amount I'm willing to risk going above this. I have done it, despite the danger, especially when we are out hunting. Channeling is very much something you have to learn to get a feel for, so it is common for even the most experienced of mages to strain themselves when in high-stress situations. Your body will try to pull more mana when you are worked up. Which isn't always bad. In a dangerous enough situation, you're much more likely to injure yourself by casting a spell that's too weak than you are by casting a spell so strong that you die. Although, minor internal damage is common. I nod along. That all makes sense so far. So, about exploding. Why does that happen, anyway? Penelope chuckles. By its very nature, mana is diffuse. You see it in the air now, but it is in fact everywhere. It permeates walls, the ground. It fills everything to almost exactly the same density. The only natural exceptions to this are elevation, as mana is thicker the lower you go, and metal, which draws more mana into an area. But the unnatural exception to this rule is of course that mana is condensed when channeled. When you squeeze it that tightly, it's constantly attempting to expand back to its normal density. A common misconception is that higher density areas are better for casting mana because there is more mana to use, but again, that doesn't matter. Mana never runs out. The reality is that denser mana zones mean that there's less of a difference between the ambient mana density and the density within your soul when you compress it. This makes it safer to channel more mana than normal. Anyway, you see where I'm going with this. If at any point during your channeling your capacity to hold the mana is less than the mana's capacity to escape, it will escape rather violently. Goodness, Penelope can get wordy when she is explaining stuff. I haven't heard her talk this much since she explained politics. She seems to be having fun, though. Maybe she'd like being a teacher. Okay, so how do I actually channel it? She scoffs at me. Patience. You have no respect for the theory, she grumbles. You have one more thing you need to watch. She flicks her fingers around, and as she does so the mana in her soul twists around into strange and alien shapes. I've seen this sort of shape before, at least kind of. It reminds me very much of how souls themselves are shaped, somehow appearing to move in directions that don't seem like they should exist at all to my physical body. When she completes the cancel command, the mana vanishes, collapsing in on itself like a sinkhole falling in every direction until only nothingness remains. That is what a successful cancel command looks like. If you start wiggling your fingers and that doesn't happen, you need to immediately restart and try again. If you royally fuck up and can't get it to work, try to let the mana out in as small of bursts as possible so that you don't blow your own kidneys out. I frown, thinking about that. Should I also move my soul into my hand or something? That might blow my hand off, but I could survive that with you here, right? Penelope blinks incredulously. Is that something you can do? Well, I genuinely don't know how that would affect things, but if things start looking terrible enough that experimentation is our best option, experiment away. I don't expect you will have many problems, though. Now, here's how we're going to do this. Theodora is going to push a very, very small amount of mana inside of you. Keep your soul where it would rest normally for now, and focus on what it feels like to have that mana within you. It should be nearly identical to how it feels right as you start to activate your talent. I nod, sitting still as Theodora walks up and puts a hand on my belly. I watch her soul as she starts to channel, flicking her fingers around and soon starting to push the vibrating mana inside her soul through her arm and into my body. Then the mana enters my soul and I seize, collapsing to the ground as a scream tears itself free from my throat. Just a few minutes earlier, Penelope had been aggravating every nerve in my body, but this is different. This feels like standing next to Guldra again, but 1,000 times worse, the mana burning inside me like fire. Theodora takes her hand off me immediately, shock on her face as Penelope starts to yell. Cancel. Cancel command. I start to move my hands automatically, but within my body something entirely different also starts to happen. I feel my soul clench, power churning as it starts to smother the mana inside it. I keel over, holding my stomach as, before I even complete the cancel command, the mana inside me gets overwhelmed and destroyed. No sound other than my ragged breaths fills the room for some time afterwards, the revenants all crowding worriedly around me. What the fuck was that? Penelope snaps, breaking the silence. I don't have the faintest idea, Theodora answers, glancing at me with genuine concern. She didn't cast anything, but the mana got destroyed. I grimace, slowly sitting up. I take it that this isn't normal, then. Theodora shakes her head, eyes sharp. Behind them she is clearly thinking a mile a minute. With the amount of mana I channeled into you, even if you catastrophically failed a spell it wouldn't have done more than a minuscule amount of internal damage. There simply wasn't enough magic for anything else. It shouldn't have even been painful if you let it burst, let alone simply having it within you. But you didn't even release the mana as a chaos effect, you destroyed it somehow. More silence descends on the room, Vitamin crawling up on my lap to give me a reassuring squeeze. This sucks. It's almost sad how a spell explicitly designed to cause pain doesn't faze me enough to make an impact, but a tiny bit of mana in my soul knocks my ass to the floor. Am I not going to be able to learn magic? Vita has mentioned before that her soul isn't human, Penelope mutters. Here I thought she was just being dramatic. You had the same reaction around Guldra, and that woman called it a sensitivity to channeled mana. I've never heard of such a thing, however. She said in a private talk that it implies animancy involvement, I croak. But how does that work? I don't know. My guess would be that they don't know either, and that they've simply witnessed animancers or people affected by animancy suffer a similar problem. But Theodora channels magic just fine, I point out. And so does Capita. So other people affected by animancy and other people who are animancers both seem to not scream and die because of this. Although, I guess I've only ever seen Capita use a talent. I don't know if she is a learned mage. Part of the reason this is so confusing is because that shouldn't make a single bit of difference, Penelope insists, shaking her head. Watch me use my talent, Vita. I glance at her, mana sight still active from before. She takes a deep breath and I feel the stirring in her soul, mana flowing inside and getting aggravated in exactly the same way that she was showing me before. The only difference is that instead of using her fingers to shape the mana, she pulls it through a series of complicated channels inside her soul, which act like a mold that forces the mana into the desired shape. She completes this spell, and while nothing seems to happen, I am probably now inhaling some sort of hopefully harmless disease. You see? Penelope says. You're still pulling in and channeling mana even when you just use a talent, I confirm, and she nods. Remove someone's soul, Vita, Penelope orders. Not mine, obviously. Vitamin or Margaret. Theodora, you said your talent could detect Vita doing that, right? Absolutely, Theodora says. It just seems like a normal spell to me, albeit a complicated and interesting one. So you're right, Vita should have mana in her soul whenever she does that. I shrug, bouncing Vitamin on my lap a little. She grins happily at me, and I murder her again. My daughter's body, still squeezing me tight in a hug, goes limp. Did you see that? Penelope mutters. Theodora nods slowly. I have no idea what that is. Something the mana sight spell isn't designed for at all. I didn't see anything, I say. There hadn't been any mana particles flying around in my soul during that, at least as far as I could tell. Theodora and Penelope look at each other, some sort of nonverbal communication exclusive to huge nerds occurring between them. You know what, how about we do this? Penelope starts. Vita, I'm going to teach you a very, very simple spell. It just converts magical energy into a weak light. It's about the shortest and one of the most useless spells there is, since it lacks any of the focusing elements that would normally make a light spell worthwhile. Still, if we make it dark enough in here, it should be a good measurement to figure out if you can even cast at all. What the hell do you mean even cast at all? I demand. I thought you said I definitely use a spell to soul steal. I'm not sure of anything right now, Vita. Just watch my hand and do what I do. It really is a simple spell, and about 10 minutes later Penelope confirms that I have it down. Right, so this time I just want you to imagine that you are trying to pull someone's soul out. But rather than complete that spell, take the feeling of the absolute start, the instant where you start to feel the magic take hold, and just pause. Hold it, push it into your hands, and perform the spell I showed you. That sounds like a lot of steps for something I've never done before, I complain. It is, but if you're a natural mage of some sort, you should pick it up fairly quickly. I scowl, closing my eyes and trying to do as she says. The feeling of pulling out a soul. It's empowering. Something from deep within surges outward whenever I grasp someone's being and pull. It's part of what I am, whatever that may be. Mana is all around me, it's within everything, but I noticed that in its natural state it is never within a person's soul. It only enters when being channeled, and then it's not quite in its natural state anymore. It's more energized, more volatile. Yet to some extent it is still where it belongs. It matches its temporary home. Mana in Penelope's soul is like a square peg in a square hole. But my soul. It reminded me of an immune system, Penelope mutters quietly to Theodora. The mana you put in her attacked like a virus and was destroyed like one. I don't know what that means, but I feel the power building inside me, so I focus on it instead. The strength to kill and shape and shatter. I already know how to push it into my hands. I did that many times before my tentacles were freed from my shell. I move how I was taught, and the power starts to wane away. I open my eyes. Holy shit, Margaret whispers. It's dark in the room, except for a low, almost useless glow on the edges of my fingers. But there is undoubtedly a glow. I've casted a spell. Everyone in the room, except for Vitamin's corpse, obviously, stares at me with an open jaw. So, what does this mean? I ask. Well, it means you can cast spells, Penelope says carefully. So that's good. I feel like there's a but coming. But you can more or less toss out every single thing they just taught you, because you don't seem to be doing it by channeling, Margaret explains. I didn't realize there was an alternative, I say slowly. Yes, well. Penelope answers, a deeply confused scowl on her face. There isn't. I stare blankly at everyone, waiting for them to explain. Don't look at me, Penelope says directly. Literally everything casts magic the same way. Mana goes in soul, soul shapes mana, mana transforms into spell effects. That's it, that's magic. Doing it without mana at all, which is what you seem to be doing, makes absolutely zero sense. You're not just breaking the laws of magic at this point, you're breaking conservation of energy. I don't know what that is, I say. Penelope massages her forehead. Theodora? Any ideas? By all appearances, and according to my talent, she is using mana, Theodora insists. We just can't see it for some reason. It doesn't make any sense for her to just be turning mana invisible, Penelope grumbles. Well, more invisible. Margaret? The slime revenant shrugs. She's gotta be using mana. Maybe she just uses a different kind of mana. Like, I don't know, the whole rest of the world uses vanilla mana and she can only use chocolate. But there aren't kinds of mana, there's just mana, Penelope insists. What if there is though? Like, yeah, I would have agreed with that statement literally 1 minute ago, but something is happening here that we don't understand. Some of our prior conceptions might just be wrong. But if there's such a thing as chocolate mana, how has no one in the history of the world ever detected or used it for anything? Surely we would have noticed by now if some creatures existed that used a kind of mana that we can't see with standard spells. And surely if this mana existed in nature, it would be causing some sort of effects that we could observe and notice. Someone would say there's this magical effect happening but we don't see the mana causing it, but that has never happened. This mana can't be natural, yet if it doesn't exist in nature, where would Vita be getting it? No one has an answer to that, so the nerds get back to thinking. I join them, trying to figure out the answers to those questions as well. Where am I getting the mana? I close my eyes, taking a deep breath and trying to draw on that power again. I look as far inward as I can, paying attention to the minute moments when I first start to feel the strength that flows through me. It's a comforting, exciting feeling. From somewhere, I draw out strength, pulling it from one of the many impossible directions into which souls reach. But of course, since my soul reaches there, wherever I pull from. Isn't that still me? I'm making it, I realize. All eyes turn to me. Except Vitamins, I guess, so I put her soul back in her body. Eh? What did I miss? She asks, blinking blearily. Margaret clears her throat, answering awkwardly. Well, I'm not entirely sure what the implications of that would be, but I think your mom just claimed to be a god. Oh. Yeah, Vitamin nods matter-of-factly. That checks out. Chapter 74. Wait, what? I ask, staring incredulously. A god? Mana comes from the Mistwatcher, Margaret clarifies. And only the Mistwatcher. Creating mana isn't possible for mortals like us. Superstitious bullshit, Penelope argues, looking irritated. It's true that no one knows any method of creating mana, but that's because there is almost no research in the subject. No one has tried. Why would anyone want or need to create more mana? We have a limitless supply of it. Penelope, you know that mana creation is theoretically impossible, Theodora argues. Mana is consumed during the casting of a spell. You can't cast a spell that consumes heat or light to create mana, that's the opposite of what a spell is. You'd need a spell that converts. Well, mana into mana, which would be pointless. Creating mana is not possible. Except that it obviously is, because it comes from somewhere, Penelope snaps. Even if that somewhere is the Mistwatcher itself, which may I remind you we have no compelling evidence to suggest other than basic proximity, it is created somehow. Therefore, creating it is possible. Sure, by something that defies our physical understanding of the world, Margaret drawls. Like, say, a god. My tendrils curl and uncurl as I listen to the debate on my apparent divinity. I want to say something, but I have absolutely no idea what. This isn't exactly the sort of conversation I ever expected someone to have about me. A god? I sure don't feel like a god. Pretty much my entire life I've spent getting rolled over, ignored, and abused. What kind of god is that supposed to be? I certainly hesitate to call Vita a god, Theodora says, mirroring my thoughts, but I agree on the other points. We have stepped into the Mistwatcher's domain. We've always towed the line, what with defying death and all. But mana. Mana is the very substance that causes the world to function. Mana is why the islands fly. If Vita is a source of that substance, even a new kind of that substance, well, I can't even begin to guess the implications of that. Well, here's my take on the implications, Penelope answers derisively. She's going to have a bitch of a time using any magic since she has to make all of the mana she's using. Otherwise, not much else. As exciting and interesting as this is, and don't get me wrong, from a research perspective, Vita, you're a wet dream. From a practical perspective this seems terrible for her future prospects. I frown, nodding a little. I can't use the mana the rest of the world uses. Something about that is extra surreal, even for a tentacle monster masquerading as a girl. It's one thing to not be human, but this is completely different from every other living creature. Penelope was just talking about how mana couldn't run out, but maybe mine can. That would be a huge pain in the ass. Hey, we don't know that yet, Vita insists, valiantly coming to my defense. Nobody knows how this really works, right? Don't just assume it's going to be bad. It sounds super awesome. Personally, I say slowly, I just don't like all the similarities between me and it that are cropping up. It? Penelope asks. The Mistwatcher, I clarify. Even if it doesn't produce mana, it's said to. And now I have soul tentacles, a big eyeball core, the ability to consume souls or store them inside me, and now I produce mana. You have to admit, god or not, it's like I'm a baby Mistwatcher or something. I even recently hatched from an egg. A baby, huh? Penelope says thoughtfully. Well, as an orphan, it would be rather poetic for you to figure out that one or both of your parents are some kind of divine entity, but I greatly question the practicality of such a birth. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Physically, you're human. Until you start growing tentacles made of flesh, I'll have to stay suspicious about any such relationship. Well, it's the Mistwatcher. What if just my soul is whatever the Mistwatcher is? And my body is just wrong for some reason. Look, Vita, as interesting as this line of thought is, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. There are plenty of other reasons you could have the similarities. Besides, if you are the child of the insanely massive creature below us, why did it try to kill you? That gets me thinking, and it gets everyone else staring at me in abject horror. The Mistwatcher did what? Margaret all but shrieks. Oh, right. You remember that perception event that happened a few days before we met? I ask. Yeah, I caused it just by making eye contact. Bastard attacked me out of nowhere. Though not in any legal or provable manner, Penelope insists. Yeah, I wave her off. But still. This shit is adding up, Penelope. She scowls at that, but nods slowly. I concede that you are more than just some girl with an obscure talent. But you're hardly some sort of nascent goddess. You're just Vita. Nothing more. Wow, I say, putting a hand over my heart in mock pain like Lind does when I call her old. Just Vita? You sure know how to make a friend feel appreciated. She jolts with surprise, looking away with a tinge of embarrassment. I didn't say that was a bad thing, she mumbles. You are one of the few people actually worth the time it takes to have a conversation with. So, I appreciate you. Oh, that's sweet. Look at how uncomfortable she is. I wonder if she's ever said that to anyone before. Am I your first friend, Penelope? I ask, smirking. She glowers furiously at me. Let's just get back to the research, she grumbles. You're going to cast that light spell, and you're going to cast it as powerfully and as constantly as you can. Theodora, Margaret, you two are going to cycle through mana sight spells and modify as much as you can on the fly to try and get an eye on what she's doing. What about me, boss? Vitamin asks, saluting. I do not care, Penelope answers bluntly. More hugging it is, then. I peel off a shard of myself and smash it, feeding my most adorable daughter some crushed soul dust as a reward for her cuteness. She vibrates a little, giggling as it settles into her being. Amassing heretical power is pleasantly tingly. She says. I know, right? I agree. Quit being cute and start casting, Penelope orders. I roll my eyes, but do as she says. It takes quite a bit of focus to start pulling out the energy again, but soon enough I have a steady stream going into the light spell. More, Penelope says. Scowling, I focus harder. At least Penelope wasn't kidding about this sort of thing being instinctive. It really is just like the feeling of gathering power to pull someone's soul out. I simply move the energy into my hands before sending it through any other bits within me that would shape it. The shaping is manual and not instinctive at all, but the light spell only takes a couple of simple flicks to activate and I can do it over and over without difficulty. The more mana I pour into it, the brighter it glows. More, Penelope demands again. I glare at her but do my best to comply. It's easier said than done. The more power I try to pull in at once, the harder it is to pull it all. Exhaustion quickly starts to set in, a strange sort of pain and weight plaguing my tentacles rather than my physical body. I see something, Theodora suddenly announces. It looks like mana, all right. I can't tell where it's coming from, though. It just seems to be appearing inside her. I told you. I grumble. This is getting really hard, by the way. Well, don't blow yourself up, Penelope says. But if you're anywhere before that point, push harder. I scowl. I don't feel like I'm going to blow myself up, I say. I use this magic and the light spell faster than I can pull it out of my soul. It's just trying to pull it any faster that's difficult. Right, that makes sense, Penelope mutters. It's not a problem for the rest of us, but it would be for you. Stop casting, then. Let's see how much chocolate mana you can hold. Please don't call it that. I do as instructed, however, because as bossy as my friends are they probably know what they are doing. I stop converting mana into light and just let the power build up in my core. More than anything, it just makes me feel bloated. I don't feel under pressure any more than that. It's uncomfortable, but there's no apparent fervor in my mana to violently escape my soul, even as I build the density up further and further. At some point, I simply can't seem to pull any more energy out of wherever the fuck I'm pulling it from. I'm just too clogged. The pathway from where I would draw the mana is so stuffed with it that I lack the strength to condense it any further. Okay, ugh, I grunt. That's it, that's all I can hold. I literally can't pull in any more. It's not really that much, Theodora comments. I'm weirdly offended by that. Okay, well if it's not going to hurt her, see if you can release a small amount out into the atmosphere, Penelope says. If you damage yourself, I'll patch you right up. I nod, and almost gratefully let some of the mana stream out. I wince, expecting it to blast through parts of my body, but that doesn't happen. It just exits, calmly and without fanfare. It's getting destroyed, Theodore reports. So that explains why we don't see any of this in nature, I suppose. Just to see if I can, I let all of the mana out at once. Theodora jumps back a bit, and a terrible screeching sound erupts for a brief moment where I assume my mana and the world's mana collide and fight each other. The world no doubt wins, and Penelope and I rub our ears to try and massage some of the pain out. Well, at least I don't have to worry about blowing myself up, I say. I don't even know where to start with this, Penelope says, but overall, as incredibly interesting as it is, I don't think we really should be focusing on researching this. Vita is strange. Everyone here knew that. But I can show you spells, and you can apparently still use the spells, and that's really what matters. Once we're immortal we'll have all the time we need to figure out what the fuck is up with her. I nod. As interested as I am in what this means, I suppose she has a point. Well, to that end I think those eggs might be of use. When I was out in the forest, I accidentally broke one of them. Inside was a baby monster, but it didn't have a soul. Yet it could still move around and stuff like that. Once it started to, the Mistwatcher reached up and gave it a soul, but it was just fine beforehand. Penelope's eyebrows raise. So you think things can live before even having a soul in the first place? Yep, I nod. It freaked me the fuck out. I think losing your soul kills you because of how the soul attaches to the body, not because they are essential to life. But I have no idea what a body without a soul would be or how it would work. The whole idea freaks me out. But now I'm thinking, what if I do what the Mistwatcher does and put a soul into a living thing rather than a dead one? What would happen? Penelope shrugs, but I know if there's one thing I can always rely on Penelope for, it is not missing an opportunity for blasphemy. Let's find out, she says. Wait, Margaret says, holding up her hands. How can souls not be the most important element of life? The three of us are nothing but souls at this point. Our bodies aren't doing anything other than keeping us inside and for some reason preventing us from getting grabbed by the Mistwatcher. None of us have any idea why the hell the Mistwatcher only grabs souls if they are not in bodies, but we've confirmed that is absolutely what's happening. When I put a soul into a corpse, it pretty much stays in there for as long as I want. But if I leave a soul lying around or put it in an object like my spear or the beautiful and perfect Roscoe, it's only a matter of time before a tentacle reaches up and eats it. Sometimes the tentacle shows up within a few minutes, and sometimes it takes upwards of several hours. There doesn't seem to be any particular connection between things that cause it to take longer, it appears to be random. Still, never once has the Mistwatcher grabbed a soul from a body. At least not with one of its spiritual tendrils. The physical one certainly tried to separate my soul from my body. That's a valid point, Penelope says. I think the only way we're going to be able to answer that is if we figure out a method of getting a living being in here without a soul and keeping it that way long enough to research. You said that the Mistwatcher placed the soul in the monster as soon as you broke the egg? Yes, that's right, I confirm. So let's beat it to the punch. Well, do it already. I do exactly that, making a soul shard and working over to the pile of unhatched eggs. Placing it inside one of them, I feel it take hold into the unborn monster. However, it doesn't at all feel like what happened when the Mistwatcher did the same thing. My shard is doing exactly what it would do to a corpse, an object, or any other inanimate thing I would place it in. It spreads out those net-like veins around the inside of the body, giving it motion where in a corpse there would be none. Of course, this body is alive, so it should be perfectly capable of moving itself without the assistance of my shard. Well, I think I fucked it up somehow, I say. This doesn't feel right at all. Get out of that egg. All of my revenants flinched at the order, but since none of them are currently inside an egg they quickly realize I'm not talking to them. The baby pentapede, however, recognizes me immediately. Or more accurately, the baby is fully unconscious, but my shard acknowledges me and forces it to move. My soul shard strains inside the tiny monster, causing its legs to jerk out and smash against the inside of the shell. Soon, the beast is free from its prison, but now it is also awake. It doesn't seem to appreciate having something control its body from the inside. There is no seamless transition, no unity between soul and flesh. My shard puppets the creature, ignoring its muscles, but the muscles are still fully functional. The baby strains and fights and screams as its first experience in the world is a horrific internal agony, a foreign will trying to wrest control of its body, counter to all of its instincts and desires. Yeah, this is kind of creepy, Vitamin opines. This isn't at all what it looked like when the Mistwatcher put souls in these things, I confirm. It's neat how it's actually kind of working, though. We gotta wait and see if the Mistwatcher tries to replace the soul even though I kinda fucked it up. I point at the struggling, terrified baby monster. Don't move. Its muscles struggle to disobey me, but my soul shard locks its joints and keeps it in line. I grin, pleased that such a tiny fraction of myself can dominate a living creature. It is interesting how much the baby is fighting, however. I mean, it literally just hatched. I suppose monsters and many animals start out much more developed than humans do, capable of walking almost as soon as they're born. They must be born with instincts to attempt to walk as well, and to either fear or attack creatures like us. Humans aren't like that, though. I wonder how a baby human would develop with a shard like this inside them. Would they just never know how strange it is? Would they even be able to function without a Mistwatcher soul inside them? While we wait for a Mistwatcher tendril to possibly pop up, I get to practicing on the other soulless eggs. The next one I do the same thing, just for consistency's sake, and we get the same sort of creature. After that, I try to do what I did in the forest and modify my soul shards to get more of the result I want. I don't feel any guiding instinct, though. It is as if the idea is there, but just out of reach. It's something I almost understand, something that won't fully enter my mind until I'm up late at night, unable to sleep. It feels like struggling to remember a word and having it just at the tip of my tongue, but it is ultimately forgotten. After another hour, a Mistwatcher tendril does raise up from the ground, but notably it does not bother either of my sharded monsters. It places a soul inside one of the eggs instead, and departs. I try to examine the Mistwatcher's shard as closely as I can, but it's just too complex, and while I still struggle to decipher it, yet another tendril puts a fresh soul in one of the 5 remaining eggs. It looks like I have a time limit on this, I grumble, but I just can't seem to figure it out. Is the Mistwatcher still not bothering the ones you modified, at least? Theodora asks. No, they are still untouched, I confirm. Can you remove your current soul shard from one of the monsters without killing it? Penelope asks. I raise an eyebrow. I think so, actually. It doesn't damage a corpse when I remove a revenant soul from it, so. Penelope looks at Theodora, her soul suddenly alight with excitement. Well then. Hypothetically, would it be possible to move a revenant soul between living bodies that have no other souls in them? Penelope presses. I don't see why not, I say. I could stick Vitamin in one of the eggs just as easily as I could put her in any other body. Oh, man. Vitamin complains. But Mom, I just upgraded from rat. I ruffle her hair, but not too hard because I don't want it to fall out. It was just an example, honey, I assure her. That's our in, then. Penelope says excitedly. Rather than trying to de-age a body, we could make new bodies, and keep one of Vida's souls in them so that they don't gain one of their own. Then, with the right magic, we could simply move older people into the younger bodies. Making the body older is substantially easier than making it younger, so if we just figure out how to clone. Then you still run into the problem of my revenants not actually controlling the body's muscles, but instead just pulling the body around with soul force, I point out. Then figure out how to fix that, Penelope orders, pointing at me. It will take us plenty of time to figure out how to make the clones anyway, but I already have a few ideas for artificial wombs, so we should see. She starts babbling stuff I don't understand, but she seems very happy about it, so I take that as a good sign. I smile, starting to zone out a little as she prattles on. Penelope is a weird friend. She is a friend though, I think. As snippy and arrogant as she can be, something about the way she gets so animated when talking about her interests has me grinning every time. It's such a treat to see, with how grumpy she normally is. We've been through a lot of ups and downs, but listening to the beautiful and joyful song in her soul right now, it feels very worth it to have met her. I'm glad to have the break. I haven't had a rest since before Angelian died. Of course, as soon as I think that, the next thing I know I'm waking up the next day. Chapter 75. Someone's hand is in my hair. It's an oddly nostalgic sensation. When weather gets bad, especially rain, sometimes all you can do is huddle up close to everyone you even kind of trust and hope that the collective pile of body heat will stop you from dying of cold through the night. In the mornings after, Sometimes you get all sorts of body parts flopped over your head or your face or your everything else. It's usually not a super great time, but it's better than freezing to death. This is different. There's no uncomfortable feeling of contact with an acquaintance. This is careful, deliberate, soft and loving. Fingers run through my hair slowly, massaging against my scalp and bringing a pleasant comfort to my now-ending rest. Of course, I can tell who it is immediately. I will never forget a soul this bright and warm. "Hi, Lynn," I mumble groggily, opening my eyes. My mother has my head in her lap, grinning that goofy grin of hers as she stares down at me. If the proximity of my revenants and Penelope are any indication, we're still in the immortality research lab to my surprise. However, Rowan is also here. "Good morning, kiddo," Lynn greets softly. "I'm not a kiddo," I grumble. "I'm a goddess." "Maybe." "Of course you are, honey," Lynn answers agreeably, returning to stroking my hair. I glance around the room, trying in vain to figure out how long I've been unconscious without being able to see the sky. I catch Rowan's eye, and he gives me a nod and smile of greeting while Vitamin laughs on his shoulders, enjoying a piggyback ride. I wave at them both, but decline to get up since I am exhausted and also incredibly comfortable. "What are you two doing here?" I ask. "We're here looking for you, you ridiculous dork," Lynn answers, flicking my nose. "You ran off by yourself and we were terrified you were dead." "Oh," I blink. "Right. Sorry, it's been a rough few days." She leans over and wraps her arms around me, squeezing me tight. "I know," she says. "I'm glad you're safe." I hug her back, and when she leans back away from me I start to stand up. My body is incredibly sore, so it takes quite a bit of stretching before I really feel awake. Rowan is listening intently to Penelope and Theodora as they exchange heated nerd talk, Margaret backing up Theodora on almost every point. Vitamin just seems happy to be included, mostly because Rowan is doing an impeccable job of not letting how much he's freaked out by having a zombie on his shoulders show on his face. I'm a little disappointed that he has a problem with Vitamin, but I'm definitely happy that he is not letting it impact her day. So, Lynn starts, strutting up to me and resting her elbow on my head. "Are you going to tell me why you suddenly feel like you could eat half the city?" I reach out a tentacle and poke her in the soul, causing her to yelp and jump off of me. I probably could, if everybody got close enough. Do I really feel that dangerous? "Honey, if you weren't mine I'd probably turn and run the other way the moment I could feel you," Lynn answers bluntly. "Honestly, you're not as strong as a lot of people I've been close to, but there's something about you that just oozes danger. What have you been doing this whole time?" "Your friend mentioned the forest?" Penelope glances my way for a brief moment. "Yes, hello Penelope, you are my friend," I taunt her again. She ignores me. "But yeah, I was in the forest. I made a cute little zombie army, hid over 100 souls, collected some eggs, and hopefully sold some high-quality chitin. You know, stress relief I guess." "Holy shit," Lynn responds, blinking in surprise. "That's where you went alone? You're quite the little powerhouse now, huh?" "Well, I'm glad you're safe." "Speaking of safe," I say, changing the subject, "where are all the kids? If you and Rowan are both here, who's protecting them?" Well, Rowan and I actually ran straight here when we heard you were back, so. Shit." I quickly glance around the room and grab my spear from the floor. "Well, we gotta go then," I insist, rushing to the stairs. "You realize I killed like 6 gang members, right? The rest of them are going to come after us if they haven't already. The Drakens clearly aren't protecting us anymore, so we have to do it ourselves." Lynn and Rowan jolt in alarm before glancing at each other with embarrassed expressions. "You're right," Lynn admits. "We haven't had any problems since you left, though. I mean, other than the panic of you being gone." "I'll go home with Vita," Rowan volunteers, extracting Vitamin from his shoulders and sitting her on a nearby table. "You can go get that thing Penelope was asking for, Lynn." Lynn nods and gives a thumbs up while I raise an eyebrow. "What thing?" I ask. I didn't stop working while you were unconscious, Penelope mutters, and considering how exhausted she looks it's easy to believe her. I need more than raw magical talent if we are going to start growing bodies from nothing. I need your mother to pick me up some materials for a few helpful tools. I nod. Makes sense to me, though I don't have the faintest idea what sort of tools Penelope is talking about. It mostly doesn't matter right now, though. Sounds good, I grunt. Now let's go already, Dad. I quickly start heading up the stairs and Rowan jogs after me. Surprise, awkwardness, and confusion well up inside him for a while before he speaks up. Wait, so I am Dad now? He asks. I thought you were mad at me about all the debt. Of course I am, I grumble. But all your dumb shit doesn't mean you didn't do the good stuff, too. Compared to some of the other dads I know, you're pretty alright. He smirks, ruffling the top of my head as he walks. We'll figure this all out, he promises. The stuff with the Drakens, the stuff with Angelion, all of this. Your friend offered to set us up with a new place to live. I stare at him with eyes wide, locking the door behind us out of habit. Penelope did. That's amazing. She's an amazing young woman, Rowan answers, casually weaving a silence bubble around us. You really lucked out befriending someone like that. Though she definitely has the whole megalomaniacal noble thing going on. Nobles tend to be raised fairly ambitious. I laugh at that. What tipped you off? My first hint was when she got legitimately disappointed at not being able to kill every single monster in the forest all by herself. Well, I had a few suspicions from how she acted around you back when you told her about your talent, Rowan sighs, but the Secret Immortality Research Lab definitely clinched it for me. It's pretty cool, though, right? I mostly just like having a place where my revenants won't get caught. About that, Rowan says slowly, did you really adopt one of your own undead? Of course. I answered defiantly. Why shouldn't I? Adopting random monster children is what my parents taught me to do, after all. He snorts, which slowly evolves into full laughter. When his chuckles are over, he reaches an arm over and squeezes me around the shoulder. Lynn and I love you, Vita, he says firmly. You've been such a big help to us, but that's not why. It's just something she and I decided together. We would take in other people who had nothing, who had no one, and we would give them ourselves. You're taking that in somewhat of an odd direction, but we are incredibly proud of you for it. I lean into his side hug, wrapping my own arm around his waist. I can tell you're kind of nervous around her, though, I bring up. Vitamin, I mean. He scratches the back of his head, frowning. Sorry, he answers bluntly. It's not her, it's just... well, her body is dead. It feels like I'm touching a dead child. That's something I have already had far too much experience with to last a lifetime. I shrug. That's valid. I've brushed up with my fair share of corpses, and I think I recall it being a bit less comfortable back before the whole necromancy thing kicked in. Now I rather like the sight and feel of dead flesh, but I shouldn't expect anyone else to. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It doesn't really bother me, but I guess death is my whole thing. Learning to undo it feels weird to me, but I think I can still help a lot. So I will. Slowly but surely, we make our way closer to our part of town. Houses get more and more dilapidated, people get more and more broken. Speaking of your whole thing, Rowan says, changing the subject, I heard something about how your body produces its own mana. Oh yeah, that, I mumble, scratching my cheek with mild embarrassment. So, apparently there's some debate on whether I'm just a monster or if I'm a divine monster somehow. I guess it's a pretty big deal. It is a big deal, Rowan agrees, but more importantly, Vita, I don't want to hear you call yourself a monster. Dad, my soul is an eyeball with tentacles and I have constant urges to fucking eat people. Even if I'm physically human. Vita, it's not about your body or your soul or any of that, Rowan insists, cutting me off. It's about your perception. He taps his forehead with a finger, looking at me intently. Perception is everything. People find whatever truths about themselves that they set out to look for, because everyone has a little bit of everything inside. The grandest saint has dark temptations. The cruelest torturer can still love his family. If you tell yourself you're a monster, those are the only parts of yourself that you will see. And if that's all you see, at some point you'll stop looking for anything else. So don't forget where you come from, Vita. Don't forget your kindness. I grunt in acknowledgement, nodding my head slowly. I'm not totally sure I understand this power of positive thinking garbage, but I'll think about it. Anyway, Rowan continues, I was wondering, since Penelope mentioned your casting is very safe but very low capacity, if you wanted to learn kinemancy? I blink at him in surprise. Learning from Rowan. I mean, yeah, sure. Also, what do you mean by low capacity? He chuckles. That's just what she said. But if that's true, kinemancy would be perfect for you. It's not a very good school of magic for offense, at least not until you get incredibly skilled at it. But some of its best tricks, at least in my opinion, require very low magical output. Besides, my understanding is that you have offense pretty well in hand with your natural talents. That's true. Adding something tricky to my repertoire might be the best way to start with magic. I'm definitely interested in learning biomancy, but it seems redundant with Penelope and, more importantly, it's apparently a phenomenally difficult school of magic to understand. Yeah, that would be awesome actually. I agree. I'd love that. This still doesn't mean you're getting any of my money, I shut myself up, tensing as I feel an all too familiar soul enter my range. It's Capita, in all her ramshackle glory. The tri-talented bitch is much closer to our home than I'm comfortable with. And with her, she has a half-dozen guns as well. Something the matter? Rowan asks. Yeah, I confirm, drawing my spear and wrapping tendrils around my limbs. Trouble. I'm going on ahead. I dash forward, legs pumping against the ground and kicking up dirt as I blast down an alleyway towards my enemies. I swore to destroy the Drakens in a moment of fury, but I did genuinely believe that it's what I should do. Capita is the only other animancer I know, and while her knowledge could therefore be invaluable to getting Angelion and Pinta back from the grave as non-slaves, I don't trust the woman in the slightest. Not unless she is a revenant. The rest of the gang is small potatoes, especially if my family is getting moved. But maybe it will help out some other people to evict them anyway. Or maybe it's just revenge. I guess we'll see when they're gone. I tear around the corner, glaring furiously at my targets as they all turn to face me. Work of art. Capita says excitedly. Our quest takes us in search of you. 'Tis fortunate we have. The last time I said this, I growl, cutting her off, I made the mistake of not really meaning it. I assure you, this time this is your one and only warning. I approach at a walking pace, ensuring my spear is at the ready. Fuck off or die, I demand. Somewhat predictably, no one immediately fucks off. The various goons Capita brought draw weapons instead, mostly wooden knives or the occasional spear of their own. I don't slow my approach. You chase a bear from its den, Capita argues in her sing-song way. Her cubs sleep within, so you'd best, I get in range of her idiots and whip a tentacle into each one. In a single motion, they all fall to the ground dead. Capita is further back, unfortunately, and I doubt I can instantly kill her with a tendril anyway. I continue to approach, stepping over the bodies. I don't care how many of you have pissed on the walls, this is not your territory anymore, I inform her. You're too close to me and mine, and we all quit. She has no response but surprise, her jaw open wide. I pull out a soul shard, pushing power into it to convert it to one of my leeching weapons. Placing it inside my spearhead, I point the tip towards her heart, still walking forward. I want to get closer before she attacks, to try and end it in one blow. I probably don't have to worry about her conomancy, but her teleportation is a pain in the ass. You dropped your part of the deal the moment my sister died, I continue. You're going to lament it when you work for me. Her eyes narrow at that, power flowing through the pathways of her soul as she readies her talents to fight. Should I be added to your canvas, The wrath of a storm will descend upon you. I sneer, tentacles writhing with furious energy. The instant I think I'm close enough, I lunge at her. Her teleportation talent activates, but this time I'm faster. Chapter 76. I manage to land my attack before Capita can teleport away, but she doesn't just stand there and take it. She dodges and I miss her heart, instead planting my spear into her shoulder. Glancing off bone, it carves the blood and muscle above her left arm. The shard in my spear drinks deep, pulling pieces from her poorly cobbled soul and empowering itself with her waning strength. Unfortunately, her talent then activates. I swear internally, expecting her to teleport away, yet for some reason I find my hands unexpectedly empty instead. With a clatter behind me, I realize that instead of retreating, she teleported my spear right after it hit her. Kind of an odd move, but not one that I'll complain about. I push a second hungry shard into my leather glove and punch her in the face. Unfortunately, without piercing her skin, the strike is far less capable of pulling out bits of soul. With no intention of letting up, I grab one of my knives with my other hand while she's still reeling, putting a shard in that as well. Capita glowers at my weapon, and with another flash of her talent, it's suddenly in her hand. I'm in the middle of trying to stab her with it when the transfer occurs, leaving me to smack her impotently while she uses the opening to stab me with my own blade. My soul shard knows better than to drink from me, but the rest of my knife is not so loyal, carving a shallow gouge through my cheek. Shit. I swear, jumping back to the edge of my tentacle range. I send 4 of my tendrils into her body, grasping and pulling at each half of her soul. I find purchase on the crack in her center, letting me grab and try to yank the damn thing in half. Capita screams, but as I feared, I'm not quite strong enough to kill her outright. The other half of her soul flares with power, the one that holds a talent she threatened me with but never used until now. Whatever it is, I feel the pressure of mana gathering around me. I leap away, trying to make it back to my spear as I feel the spell start to complete inside of her. Something goes wrong. As mana fills the pathways of her soul, it reaches the broken edge of its half as if it expects to find more there but instead simply bursts through to her core's center. The mana is still gathered, the spell still activates, but it comes out horribly wrong. Capita attacks with only half of a talent, and it works about as well as a bum with only half the casing. In the spot where I was standing a mere second prior, a screeching roar that nearly bursts my eardrums accompanies a rapid influx of air. Leaves and dirt particles suck upward into the center of the effect, spiraling closer and closer together before colliding together and crushing down to the size of a grain of sand. A wave of pressure vibrates my body for a silent instant, tiny explosions of lightning and flame and sparks of light dancing around the area before a thunderous clap ends it all, knocking me sprawling as I try to make my way back to my weapon. 'Tis a crime to shatter such a priceless piece. Capita shrieks, scrambling to her feet. No wonder I've never seen her use the talent before. She's just as endangered by it. Don't make me, work of art. I ignore her threats, already leaping back in the Conomancer's direction with spear in hand. A tendril empowers my backup knife with a shard as well. She'll probably teleport the spear again, so the knife will be my true attack. Of course, she's still holding my first knife, so I have to worry about not getting stabbed again, but I'll figure it out. Sure enough, power gathers in her soul, specifically the half that teleports. I lunge with my spear, but rather than feeling it vanish from my hand, Capita ducks the strike, stepping in closer with a knife. I start to dodge, and in an instant I realize that's a fatal mistake. The knife is just a feint, and the way I fell for it combined with the failed strike on my end gives Capita the perfect opportunity to plant the palm of her free hand square on my chest. A spell surges, incredible amounts of mana passing into me. It's not the painful kind that rages when caught inside my soul, but simply a spell being cast on my physical body. That doesn't mean that it's any less dangerous, of course. It feels like when Penelope casts a spell to heal me. And I know full well whenever one of those spells enters me, Penelope can just as easily rip my insides apart. I suspect that Capita is not about to be as kind as my ornery biomancer. Thankfully, I know how to resist spells. I can cut off Penelope's attempts at healing, and I just as easily cut off Capita's attempt at teleporting me. With a flex of my soul's power, I fight the energy Capita pours into me and win. The look on her face as I fail to be budged is priceless. Unfortunately, my spell resistance doesn't seem to extend to my stuff. A sudden chill encompasses my entire body as everything within an inch or two of my person is fully affected by the spell and removed. Only my spear is large enough to be outside this radius, and I'm much closer to Capita than I'd like to be in terms of using the polearm. Noticing the new location of my teleported shards as I jump away, I track the distant fluttering of my outfit and gear as it starts its fall from hundreds of feet in the air. A fall that, should I be subject to it, I doubt I'll be surviving. Not that I like my prospects of fighting without armor or even clothes much better. Oh, my! A work of art without its finishing coat of paint. Capita chuckles, also taking the opportunity to jump away and create more distance. Unexpected but not unwanted. Oh good, she's being fucking creepy about it. I grit my teeth, trying not to let my shiver of discomfort slow me down. If she's cracking jokes while I'm trying to murder her, she's a lot less worried than I'd like her to be. Capita has her free hand on her wounded shoulder, trying to slow the flow of blood with pressure. It's not a mortal wound as far as I can tell. Blood from my own cut trickles down the side of my face, and though it's not as severe of an injury as hers, I'm now devoid of protection against someone that can steal my weapons at will. Things aren't going well. Surrender, please? Capita asks hopefully. I respond by throwing my spear at her. I suspect if I don't, she's just going to teleport it out of my hands anyway. Unfortunately, she not only dodges it but strikes it mid-flight, forcing me to leap out of the way as the flying projectile is suddenly behind me, nearly skewering me through the kidney. The moment I start to move, Capita aims her terrifying second talent at me, starting an implosion in the area I'm about to end up. Thankfully, I know something she doesn't. Before she can complete her partially broken innate spell, an invisible Rowan blasts a gout of fire at the back of her head. Capita's talent sputters and fails as the woman shrieks in agony, diving out of the way as best she can while attempting to stab Rowan in the gut. Of course, she misses catastrophically, Rowan not actually standing anywhere near where the flames originate from. Hair on fire, she immediately drops the dagger and sets to try and extinguish her head, smacking at the flames as she rolls along the ground. I sprint forward, retrieving my spear again as I try and figure out a way to stop it from being teleported out of my hands again. Is there some way to extend magic resistance to nearby objects, perhaps? I rush towards Capita as I try to think, unwilling to give her an opportunity to do the same. A massive amount of power starts gathering into her soul, however. Again, it's the half that makes explosions, not the half that teleports. Why doesn't she just teleport away? Stop. Capita orders, finally putting out the flames on her head. Her hair is burnt to smithereens, horrible red blisters reminding me of Remus's scars. If I die I shall not die alone. The air all around us gets horribly thick, the threat of a massive amount of destruction hanging openly above our heads. For once, Capita declines to speak in sing-song riddles. She's obviously threatening to kill us all, and unfortunately it looks like she can do it. I halt my approach, staying very still. Maybe Rowan can kill her before. No, it's not worth the risk. Rowan isn't the most skilled thermomancer around, and if he could kill her that quickly he probably would have done it on the first blow. Either that or he purposefully spared her life out of his sense of morality, in which case I can't rely on him anyway. Sure enough, he's making no moves towards her, keeping invisible. I scowl. This is going far worse than I had hoped. I didn't think to plan for Capita teleporting everything except herself. Not that I had a particularly detailed plan coming into this. I just felt her near my home and kind of flipped out. Why? Capita cries, staring at me. Quite literally, too. Tears start to form in her eyes. Why? I wanted to be friends with you. The sincerity of those words, combined with just how unexpected they are, has me reeling a little. What? That's so damn ludicrous I've half a mind to assume my senses aren't working. You brought a bunch of goons to my house after my sister recently died because you wanted to be friends with me? I ask, shocked at the sheer audacious stupidity of the idea. I feared the wrath of the artist's work, capital chokes, though it would seem my entourage was more gift than guard. I must say, since you have clearly not accepted the gifts as a peace offering, it's rather rude to eat them anyway. I haven't fucking eaten them, I correct, though I'm certainly tempted to. Time to stall, I suppose. Well, you have us in a stalemate. What now? Now? The woman asks, seeming genuinely miserable. Now I think I rather wish to forget all of this. Let us start over, a work of art. When you see me again, kindly do not inform me how utterly I failed. What? Was she going to conimancy herself into forgetting this entire thing? Is that why she's so nutso? I'm certainly not going to fucking forget, so what would it even accomplish? I don't get much time to be dumbfounded by that, for the mana and the air surges even higher. Holy shit, she's actually going to kill us all. I rush straight at her as fast as I'm able, desperately hoping I can stab her through the head or heart before all that power can be unleashed. Yet I'm too slow, I know I am. This was reckless. I should have never fought her before I can rip her to shreds with one tendril. Rowan and I together almost beat her, but I never guessed her other talent could just smash us into dust. I got arrogant. Again. Yet at the last moment, everything shifts. Power from one side of her soul shunts itself into the other, and Capita grins madly at me as my magic resistance is overwhelmed and everything suddenly vanishes. My ears pop painfully and I'm instantly overcome with a sense of vertigo, my vision flashing yellow. Yellow. The sky is everywhere, without any city walls or trees or even tall people to hamper my view of it. Islands are in every direction, not just up. One droops with verdant greens, massive vines likely the size of entire forests hanging from its sides, swaying in the breeze. Another made of deep red stone, curved spires jutting out of its top and bottom, like claws grasping at the clouds. I can even see the edge of my own island from here, and beyond it, far below, I see hints of the mist that I'm quite thankful to notice are thick today. I get to appreciate this for only the barest instant before I realize I am falling. My body twists and tumbles in the air, a scream escaping my lips as I try and fail to orient myself somehow. There has to be a way to improve my odds of survival. Yet I have nothing, not even a shirt to try and fashion into a shitty parachute. Although I have to wonder as I struggle to stop spinning, will it even matter? I'm above the city, I can tell that much. A city made of stone and clay, sitting in a crater. There's not exactly going to be a soft place to land. As panic fills me, a familiar soul suddenly pops into my range. Though with something subtly wrong with it. Is the work of art falling into a spot of trouble? Capita asks cheerfully. Her hand grabs my shoulder, stabilizing me so that I am merely dropping through the air rather than tumbling through it. We're horrifyingly high up, much further than my gear had been teleported. I don't have the faintest idea when we'll actually hit the ground, although I suspect that will start to become increasingly more apparent the closer I get. Yet with all the terror and anger and peril, one question snaps to my mind first. Where's Rowan? I demand. I can't feel my father anywhere within my soul sense, though for that matter I can't feel the ground either. If he was teleported up here with me, I can't imagine he has a trick to save himself. Not that I do either. Capita merely tilts her head at the question, however. She questions about the gambler? This one knows not, and knows not why you know not. I must admit I feel somewhat chagrined. When I requested you meet with Sky, it seems I should have added clarifications. What? I shriek. The work of art has dressed for success, at least, she murmurs, tapping her chin. Though while the sky enjoys gazing down at bare mountains of fresh earth each morning, this painting seems less sultry and more terrified. May this simple palette ask what happened? You did this. I snap indignantly, wind rushing around us. I did. She asks. We weren't fighting, were we? I grab onto her shoulders, very nearly thrusting tentacles through her belly to try and rip her soul asunder again, before I realize something. Her shoulders aren't damaged. The wound I gave her is gone. She has no burns, and all her hair is exactly as it was when the fight started. And she's genuinely ignorant of everything that just occurred. Now I think I rather wish to forget all of this. Let us start over, a work of art. Did she actually make herself forget? But how did that heal her? How did that repair her clothing? What the fuck is going on? I swear, if this maniac has 4 talents, I'm going to lose it. What kind of talent would even do this? Rewinding time for herself? I've never even heard of magic like that. Yet I don't know what else it could be. Her soul is the same, I can confirm that. There are a few subtle differences, particularly along the giant crack, but they are the kind of differences that could very much be accounted for by a slight alteration in memory. There's something bugging me, something else that I know is wrong, but I don't really have time to look into it while falling to my death. In fact, it's about time I ditch my entire half-baked plan to murder Capita. At least for now. I'm unarmed, unclothed, and against someone somehow unharmed. I need to figure out quite a few counters before I'm ready to get revenge for Angelian. But I seem to have the opportunity being handed to me, so I may as well take it. No, I lie. You said you would catch me. She brightens immediately, apparently quite worried that I was about to say yes. I did. I did. It would be my pleasure to cradle such a beautiful work of art all the way to the ground. She moves to grab me, and for a moment I almost consider not letting her. I'm fucking naked, after all, and Capita has been more than a little unnerving about it. Which really isn't a joke. I've seen shit happen to other people growing up. But what am I going to do, push her away and die splattered on the stone below? Fortunately, she just loops one arm under my knees and uses the other to support my back, neither her eyes nor fingers wandering as I feel her talent start to activate. Unfortunately, that only replaces my prior worry with a new one. It's the wrong talent. She's not teleporting, she's activating another implosion. What's going on? Have I been tricked? Does Capita know how to send false emotions to my soul sense? I have to. A powerful force suddenly pushes against us from below, slowing the fall. Rather than a chaotic implosion of devastating energy, Capita's talent creates outward explosive force. I look down, watching with surprise as her feet and her back exude a pure plush, chaotic torrent that seems barely directed enough to not kill us both. Capita winces as she maintains the spell, but after a tense few minutes we land on a roof. Specifically, one of the many roofs my weapons and armor ended up on, which were fairly easy to find as thankfully the Mist Watcher hasn't eaten the shards I put in them yet. My armor even though landed mostly in the same spot, since the straps were still done up and interconnected when it vanished off of my body. It's fortunate only a few bits and pieces made it to the alleyways below. If anything valuable fell all the way down there, I doubt I would be seeing it again. Capita sits and pants with exhaustion as I briefly appreciate solid ground before quickly gathering what I can and putting the armor back on. Hey, Capita, I say once I'm mostly decent, did you want to be friends? For a moment, her face reminds me of Bentley receiving a compliment. It's so pure and joyful that I nearly regret trying to murder her. Like a pauper wishes to befriend a princess. She insists. I desire it more than with any other, bar the Sky. Sky's gang let my sister die, I remind her. You know that, right? That sobers her real fast. It was not his fault. The man assigned to watch your family took a bribe. We have him in custody, and I will happily arrange transferring further punishment to you. I frown. I think I'd like that, but fault or not, my family worked for you, bled for you, got beaten by you all in the name of a protection you failed to deliver. Sky fucked it up by having a shitty guard put in charge of upholding it. So our deals are off. I hated him before, and now I don't trust him either. But you should. Capita all but whines. He will fix this city. He will save our home. He will make a place safe for us to live. You have to trust him. I want you both. Why? I ask. Because I'm your work of art? You barely know me, Capita. We've had a handful of interactions and most of them involve threats or mind control. Usually both. She has no apparent response to that, so I continue. What is Sky doing with all the metal he had in steel? I ask. Her eyes go wide. I cannot tell you that, she stutters. Not even if we're friends. I ask, my own eyes narrowing. She hugs her knees. You won't like it, she mumbles. You won't know until you try, I press, although I expect she's quite right. The woman is insane, and I doubt Sky is much less so. It turns my stomach a little to pretend to be friendly in order to try to abuse that insanity, at least until I remember how she mind-fucked my parents. Seemingly permanently, in Lynn's case. Which I guess I fully intend to do right back to her, but that's different. Kind of. Anyway, my prodding seems to do the trick, though the answer I get is one of her asinine riddles. The Sky's wrath comes from above. The Sky's justice comes from below. The rich only get richer until they are made as poor as everything else. He with the soul of a crown will be the only king left to rule. I scowl. That sounds to me like they're going to use the metal to assassinate the king. With that much power it might even be possible. Fortunately, I don't actually give a shit about the king, so whatever. I'm not going to join your gang, and my family is leaving it, I insist. But if you hand over the guy that was supposed to protect us and leave us alone afterwards, I'll consider staying out of your way. Until I'm strong enough to end it in one blow, that is. Capita nods glumly. I just don't want to be apart from you, she mutters. I finally found you after all this time. I raise an eyebrow at that. Found me? Were you looking for me? Well, I didn't think so. Not until I found you, anyway. But now I have, and I know that I was. I scowl. I have no idea where to start poking that. Well, if you quit the gang you can hang out with me as much as you want, I answer, though mostly because I know she won't. I could never. She gasps predictably. Please, please join us. I need you and I need Sky. Why? I ask. Why do you need either of us? I love him, she answers simply. And as for you, to see the work of art that my sketch was for, it shows me my suffering had meaning. That I was not built for nothing. You are the reason. If you help him, then all of me is helping him. Even my pain. I sigh, putting the last of my armor on, securing my weapons, and standing back up. Everyone is built for nothing, Capita, I say simply. We're food on a farm. Don't try to find meaning in the goals of whatever fucked up bastard split two souls in half and glued them to each other. Besides, you've seen me. You really think whoever did your cobalt job also made something like me? Who exactly do you think it is, anyway? She tilts her head. Who would make a work of art, if not an artist? She asks, standing up as well. I snort derisively. Thanks, very helpful. Capita shrugs. I cannot tell you more of something you cannot remember. Perhaps later, we can be friends. I will beseech the Sky to follow your demands. He will not be happy, but I believe we have almost finished gathering what we need regardless. I will do all I can to ensure your family is left alone. And with that, power builds up in her soul and she teleports herself away. I snort. All that, and now she teleports herself? I start to wonder what she meant by not being able to tell me more of something I can't remember, but quickly dismiss the thought. I have much more important things to worry about, now that this conversation/battle to the death is over with. Namely, how the fuck am I going to get off of this roof? Tobe continued. Thanks for listening.